Her hand was shaking on his chest. Not from fear. From something worse. From wanting. Say it again, Jiwon whispered, his forehead nearly touching hers, his voice low enough that only she could hear it over the music. Tell me this was never real. I want to hear you lie. Amanda opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Because it wasn't a lie anymore. And they both knew it. Somewhere behind them a camera flashed. Somewhere behind them, a grandmother smiled like she'd just won a war Amanda didn't know they were fighting. And somewhere behind them a man named Min-ho, the man Amanda had loved quietly for 2 years, was watching her in another man's arms for the very first time. This is where it started to fall apart. Or maybe, this is where it finally started to become real. Welcome to Afro Meets Seoul Stories. On today's episode, you'll get a dose of unexpected encounters and beautiful beginnings. If this is your first time here, make sure to like, subscribe, and click the notification icon so you never miss a story. Send this one to a friend who needs a good cry and a good romance in the same hour. And tell me in the comments, which city and which country are you watching from? I love knowing how far these stories travel. Now let's go back. Back before the flashing cameras. Back before the grandmother's smile. Back to where a tired nurse made one small, desperate decision that would change the rest of her life. Amanda Okoye had a rule. Don't fall for men who don't know you exist. She'd broken that rule the very first week she started at Seoul Central Medical Center 2 years ago, the moment Dr. Min-ho walked into a code blue like he was walking into a quiet room. Calm hands. Calm voice. A kind of stillness that made chaos behave. She remembered thinking that man could talk anyone back from the edge of anything. She never told him that. She never told him anything really. 2 years of quiet admiration, folded up small enough to carry without anyone noticing. 2 years of finding reasons to be near the cardiothoracic wing. 2 years of laughing a little too long at his dry jokes in the break room and telling herself it meant nothing. It meant everything. She just wasn't ready to say that out loud. You're doing the thing again, said Grace, her closest friend on the ward, sliding into the seat across from her in the cafeteria. Grace had the kind of face that always looked like it knew a secret. The staring into your coffee thinking about Min-ho thing. I wasn't thinking about him. Amanda. You were smiling at a paper cup. Amanda set the coffee down like it had personally betrayed her. I don't smile at paper cups. You smile at anything that reminds you of him. It's honestly a medical condition at this point. Grace leaned in, lowering her voice the way she did right before she said something Amanda wasn't going to like. The gala is in 4 days. His whole department will be there. You know what that means. It means I'll be in the corner holding a glass of wine I'm not going to drink, watching him from a safe distance like I have for 2 years. Or, Grace said, you finally do something about it. Amanda laughed, but it wasn't really a laugh. More like air escaping a place that had been holding its breath too long. Grace. He doesn't know I exist beyond the nurse who brings extra coffee to the ICU. I'm not going to walk up to a man like that and confess 2 years of feelings at a hospital fundraiser. I'm not saying confess. Grace's eyes lit up in that particular way that always preceded a terrible, brilliant idea. I'm saying, make him notice you. Men like Min-ho don't wake up one day and see a woman clearly. They need a nudge. A little jealousy. A little someone else wants her. Absolutely not. Hear me out. No. One night. One fake date. You bring a +1 to the gala. Min-ho sees you on another man's arm. Something shifts in that stubborn surgeon brain of his. And by the end of the night you find out if 2 years of pining was worth it. Grace shrugged like she just solved world hunger. Worst case, you had a nice dinner with a stranger. Best case, you finally get the man you've been in love with since you started working here. Amanda wanted to say no. She really did. But some reckless, tired 29-year-old part of her, the part that had spent 2 years watching from the sidelines, was already doing the math. 4 days. 1 night. What's the worst that could happen? She had no idea how wrong that question was. The agency Grace found her was small, discreet, and, according to the website, specializing in professional companionship for social events, no questions asked. Amanda booked a man named Kim, paid a deposit that made her wince, and spent the next 3 days convincing herself this wasn't insane. The night of the gala, Seoul Central's ballroom looked like something out of a dream. Chandeliers throwing gold light across marble floors, string quartet in the corner, half the city's medical elite in black tie, sipping champagne under a banner that read Hope Through Healing. Amanda stood at the entrance in a deep emerald dress that made her feel like a different woman than the one who spent 12-hour shifts running on hospital coffee and stubbornness. Her hands were cold. Her heart was louder than the quartet. Where's he? Where's Kim? She scanned the room and her eyes landed on a man standing alone near the tall windows, tall, composed, dressed in a black suit that fit like it had been made for exactly that room and no other. Silver blonde hair. A face that looked like it belonged on a magazine cover, calm and unreadable, watching the crowd like he was somewhere else entirely. That has to be him. Amanda took a breath, smoothed her dress and walked straight toward the most expensive mistake of her life. Kim, she said, arriving in front of him with a smile that took every ounce of courage she had left. Hi. I'm so glad you made it. I'm Amanda. The man turned. And for one full second he simply looked at her. A look she couldn't read, careful and searching, like he was deciding something important in real time. I'm not Kim, he said slowly. Amanda's stomach dropped through the floor. Oh my God. I am so sorry, I thought. But, he said, and something shifted behind his eyes. Something close to amusement, close to interest, close to a decision being made. You can call me whatever you need me to be tonight. Amanda stared at him. What? You walked over here for a reason, he said quietly, stepping half a step closer, voice low enough that it felt like it belonged only to her. I'd like to know what it is. And I'd like to help. Behind them, across the ballroom, Dr. Minho had just walked in. And for the first time in 2 years his eyes landed on Amanda and stayed there. Amanda didn't know it yet, but she had just said yes to the wrong man. She had no idea yet how right that wrong would turn out to be. The man who was not Kim did not let go of her hand for the rest of the night. Amanda kept waiting for the panic to arrive. The moment where the whole plan collapsed and she'd have to explain to a stranger why a woman he'd never met had walked up to him wearing a fake name in her mouth. But the panic never came. Instead there was this. His hand at the small of her back, steady and warm, guiding her through the crowd like they'd done this 100 times before. You should know, she whispered, smiling for the benefit of the room. I hired an actor. His name was actually Kim. You're not him. I gathered. So why are you doing this? He glanced down at her, and for a second the composed mask slipped just enough to let something real through, something almost boyish. Because in a room full of people who want something from me, you're the first person all night who wanted absolutely nothing. Pause. I find that refreshing. Amanda didn't know what to do with that sentence. She filed it away somewhere warm, somewhere she'd examine later, alone, when her heart wasn't doing this ridiculous thing in her chest. What do I call you? She asked. Since you're clearly not Kim. Hyun, he said. Just that. Nothing else. She didn't ask his last name. He should have. Across the room, Dr. Minho was not dancing. He was not laughing with colleagues. He was standing near the bar with a drink he hadn't touched, watching Amanda move through the crowd on a stranger's arm, and something in his chest, something he didn't have a name for yet, refused to look away. Who is that with Nurse Okoye? He asked a passing colleague, keeping his voice carefully casual. No idea. Never seen him before. A shrug. Whoever he is, she looks happy. Minho took a slow sip of his drink and said nothing. But he watched. By the time the string quartet slowed into something softer, Jiwon had Amanda's hand resting in his, both of them swaying in the loose, easy way of two people who technically shouldn't have been this comfortable with each other after 40 minutes. 2 years, he said suddenly. Amanda blinked. What? You mentioned it earlier. When you were explaining your plan. Faint knowing smile. 2 years of loving a man who apparently needed a stranger in a rented suit to notice you exist. Amanda felt her face heat. It sounds pathetic when you say it like that. It doesn't sound pathetic. His voice dropped, quieter now, just for her. It sounds like loyalty wasted on someone who wasn't paying attention. There's a difference. She looked up at him, then really looked, and for one dizzying second she forgot entirely why she'd come here tonight. Forgot the coffee and longing routine with Minho, forgot the 2 years, forgot everything except the fact that a stranger with silver blonde hair and unreadable eyes was looking at her like she was the only person in the room worth looking at. That was the moment the camera flash went off. Neither of them noticed until the photo was already halfway across the internet. She found out the next morning mid-shift, when Grace practically tackled her in the supply closet, phone already in hand. Amanda. Amanda. You need to see this. The photo was beautiful, unfairly so. Amanda's head tilted up, Jiwon's hand at her back. Both of them caught in that half-second of a look that made strangers online write paragraphs about main character energy in the comments. It had 11,000 shares by 9 a.m. Who is he? Grace demanded. Amanda, do you know who you danced with last night? His name is Jiwon. That's all I know. Grace made a sound like she'd swallowed her own tongue. Amanda. That's Park Jiwon. As in, Park Group. As in, his family's foundation owns this hospital. As in, he is worth more than the entire east wing you're currently standing in. The supply closet went very quiet. That's not possible, Amanda said, because it was easier than believing it. He was wearing a regular suit. He didn't have security. He just talked to me. Like a person. Because he is a person, Grace said slowly, who also happens to be one of the most eligible billionaires in the country, and you accidentally asked him to be your fake boyfriend at a hospital gala. And now the entire internet thinks you're dating him. Amanda's phone buzzed in her pocket. Unknown number. I saw the photos. Should we discuss what happens next, or would you prefer to handle a billionaire's grandmother by yourself? Amanda stared at the message for a long moment before she noticed something else. Something that made her stomach drop for an entirely different reason. Dr. Min-ho was standing at the end of the hallway, watching her. And for the first time in 2 years he was the one who looked nervous. Amanda, he said, crossing toward her, hands in his coat pockets, a careful smile on his face she'd never seen directed at her before. Can I buy you coffee sometime? I feel like I never properly get to know you. Outside of work. 2 years. 2 years of nothing. And now, 12 hours after a stranger touched her back on a dance floor, the man she'd loved in silence was finally looking at her. She should have felt victorious. Instead she felt strangely, quietly unsettled, like she'd won a prize she could no longer remember wanting. Her phone buzzed again. One more thing. My grandmother wants to meet you. Tonight. She's already told 3 board members we're engaged. Amanda closed her eyes. What will happen next? With Min-ho finally interested, with a billionaire's family suddenly convinced this fake romance is real, and with Amanda caught in the middle of a lie that's about to get a lot harder to walk away from. If you're feeling the tension building already, that's exactly where we want you. Hit subscribe now so you don't miss where this goes. The grandmother's house did not look like the home of a woman who casually announced engagements to strangers. It looked like a museum. Quiet, precise, every object placed with intention. Amanda stood in the entryway in a dress Grace had picked out in 45 minutes flat, hands cold, heart hammering, wondering exactly how her life had arrived here in less than 24 hours. Relax, Jiwon murmured beside her, his hand finding hers without asking permission, without her minding at all. She's terrifying. But she likes honesty more than she likes wealth. Don't perform for her. She'll know. Easy for you to say. She's your grandmother. She's about to be yours too, apparently. A small dry smile. According to her, anyway. Halmoni Park was 78 years old and looked at Amanda the way a jeweler examines a stone, not unkindly but thoroughly, missing nothing. She took Amanda's hand in both of hers, papery and warm. You're the one who didn't know who he was, she said. Not a question. Yes, ma'am. I made a mistake at the gala. I thought he was someone else. Good. The old woman's eyes crinkled. Everyone who knows who he is wants something from him. You wanted nothing. Do you know how rare that is at his age in his world? Amanda glanced at Jiwon, who was watching this exchange with the careful stillness of a man standing very near a cliff edge. Halmoni, he said gently, we should talk about the engagement comment. It was. I'm not taking it back. He said it simply, like discussing the weather. The board has already reacted well to the news. Investors like stability. A settled man is a trustworthy man. You've been running from marriage for 6 years, G. I finally found a woman worth stopping for. I'm not undoing that because you're both too proud to admit you like dancing together. The silence that followed had weight to it. We barely know each other, Amanda said quietly. Then get to know each other, Halmoni said, as if this solved everything. You have time. The engagement doesn't need a wedding date attached to it yet. Let it breathe. See what grows. She patted Amanda's hand once, final and warm. I have a good feeling about you, dear. I don't often say that. Outside in the car, Amanda finally let herself exhale. I am so sorry, Jiwon said, staring straight ahead. This wasn't supposed to happen. I thought I could talk her down before it went this far. Can we just end it? Tell everyone the truth. He turned to look at her, and something in his expression made her stomach tighten. If we end it now, publicly, after the board has already reacted to the engagement news, the stock dips. My family's foundation funds 40% of your hospital's ICU expansion. That funding gets re-evaluated the moment my grandmother looks foolish in front of the board. He exhaled slowly. And you, the internet has already decided who you are. Ending it messy makes you the woman who used a billionaire for a photo op. That story sticks to you long after this. Amanda stared out the window at the city lights blurring past. So we're stuck. For now, he said. And then quieter, is that entirely terrible? She turned to look at him. He wasn't smiling. He looked almost afraid of the answer. No, she admitted, surprising herself. It's not entirely terrible. The weeks that followed did not feel like a lie. That was the problem. There were late nights at her apartment when Jiwon showed up unannounced with soup because he'd heard she'd worked a double. There was the night it rained without warning and he gave her his jacket and walked her home anyway, both of them soaked, laughing about nothing in particular. There was a Tuesday when she got paged into an emergency surgery consult and came out 4 hours later to find him asleep in a waiting room chair, having refused to leave. You didn't have to stay, she told him, throat tight for reasons she didn't examine too closely. I wanted to, he said, rubbing his eyes. Also, your friend Grace threatened to release information about you to the tabloids if I left you here alone. He's terrifying. I like her. Amanda laughed. Real laughter, the kind that came from somewhere she'd forgotten she had. And in that laugh, something quiet and dangerous settled into place between them. Not performance. Not photos for the cameras. Something real, growing in the space where the lie used to be. Meanwhile, Minho had become a fixture at her locker, in the cafeteria, in the hallway outside the ICU. 2 years of silence suddenly replaced with coffee invitations and lingering questions about her weekend. I don't understand, Amanda admitted to Grace one afternoon. 2 years, Grace. 2 years. I would have given anything for this. And now that it's happening, I feel nothing. Grace guessed. Confused, Amanda corrected, though the word felt like a lie the moment it left her mouth. Because somewhere underneath the confusion was a truth she wasn't ready to say out loud, that the man she used to watch from across a hospital hallway had started to feel like a memory of a feeling, and the man she'd only meant to borrow for one night had started to feel like home. If you've ever loved someone quietly for years only to feel your heart quietly change its mind on you, tell me in the comments. Has that ever happened to you? And which man do you think Amanda's heart is actually choosing, even if she won't admit it to herself yet? Drop your answer below. I read every single one and I want to know who you're rooting for before the next part changes everything. The first sign that something was wrong came in the form of a folder Amanda wasn't supposed to see. She'd stayed late finishing charts and Jiwon had come to walk her home, a habit now unspoken and steady, the kind of thing neither of them called by its real name. He'd left his laptop bag open on her kitchen counter while he made coffee, and a manila folder had slid halfway out. Seoul Central Medical Center. Procurement irregularities confidential. What is this? She asked before she could stop herself. Jiwon turned and for the first time since she'd known him, something like fear crossed his face. Not for himself. For her. Amanda, sit down. She didn't sit down. Jiwon. He exhaled slowly, weighing something in his mind before he finally spoke. For the last 8 months, I've been investigating financial irregularities in the hospital's supply contracts. Overbilling. Falsified equipment invoices. Millions of dollars redirected through shell vendors. He rubbed his jaw. My family's foundation funds this hospital. If someone is stealing from it, I need to know who, before the board does, before it becomes a scandal that costs lives. And the gala, Amanda said slowly, piecing it together, feeling something cold settle in her chest. Was that part of it? Was I? No. He crossed the room in 2 steps, taking her hands before she could pull them away. No, Amanda, listen to me. The investigation started before you ever walked up to me at that gala. You were never part of a plan. You were an accident I have never once regretted. His voice cracked slightly on the last word, like the admission cost him something. But now that we're, connected publicly, visibly, it puts you inside a situation I never wanted you near. What does that mean? It means someone inside that hospital is moving a great deal of stolen money, and they will not want a nosy CEO's very visible girlfriend asking the wrong questions to the wrong people. His grip on her hands tightened just slightly. I need you to be careful. I need you to tell me immediately if anything feels wrong. Anyone acting strange. Anyone asking questions about supply requisitions, about me, about us. Amanda felt her pulse in her throat. You're scaring me. Good, he said quietly. Because I'm scared too. Not for me. For you. 3 days later, Amanda found out exactly what he meant. She'd been pulled aside by the head of hospital procurement, a soft-spoken man named Director Han who had never once spoken to her directly in 2 years of employment. He smiled the whole time he asked his questions. How close was she really to Mr. Park? Did he discuss work with her? Had she seen any documents lying around his home or car? Amanda answered carefully, politely, and left the conversation with her hands shaking. She told Ji-won that night and watched his expression shift into something hard and unfamiliar. Not anger exactly, but a controlled, dangerous calm. Han, he said almost to himself. That's interesting. You know him. I know his name is on 3 of the Shell vendor filings. Ji-won's jaw tightened. He's either very stupid or very confident no one's watching him yet. Ji-won, if he thinks I know something. You're not going anywhere alone for a while, he said, and it wasn't a request. I mean it, Amanda. Not the parking garage at night. Not walking home. I'll have someone with you or I'll be with you myself. I don't need a bodyguard. You need one exactly as much as I need you safe, he said, and something in the rawness of his voice stopped her protest cold. I have spent 6 years building walls so high nobody could get close enough to matter. You got past every single one of them by accident, wearing green, calling me the wrong name. His hand came up to touch her face, gentle, like she was something he was afraid to break. I'm not going to lose you to a man skimming supply contracts. I refuse. Amanda's breath caught. This didn't feel like a fake relationship anymore. It hadn't felt like one in weeks. But hearing it said out loud, raw and unguarded, made something in her chest crack wide open. Ji-won. Don't, he said softly. Don't say anything yet. I know you're still untangling things. I know part of you still thinks this started as a mistake. I just needed you to know how I feel in case something happens before I get another chance to say it properly. Meanwhile, across the hospital, Min-ho had begun to notice something he didn't like about himself. He watched Amanda in the hallway laughing at something on her phone. A message from Ji-won he assumed correctly, and felt a hot, uncomfortable twist of jealousy he had no right to feel. 2 years he'd had to notice her. 2 years he'd spent complimenting her competence and never once her heart. You've been staring at Nurse Okoye's schedule for 10 minutes, his colleague noted dryly. I'm not staring. You've rescheduled 2 of your own coffee breaks to match her shift changes. That's not subtle, Min-ho. Min-ho set down his tablet, frustrated with himself in a way he wasn't used to feeling. He was a man who solved problems with precision, who didn't chase what he couldn't understand. But Amanda had become a problem he couldn't solve, and worse. A problem that now belonged publicly and completely to someone else. He thought of the 2 years he'd let slide by. He thought of every missed coffee, every unanswered glance, every quiet Tuesday she'd smiled at him and he'd simply nodded and walked away. I had her the entire time, he realized, with the particular horror of a man discovering his mistake far too late. And I let her go looking for someone else to make me jealous enough to see her. He didn't know yet how right he'd gotten it or how wrong his timing had become. If you think Min-ho finally realizing his feelings changes anything, or if you think it's simply 2 years too late, let me know what you think. We're getting close to the truth now. Everything broke open on a Thursday. Amanda was finishing rounds when her phone buzzed with a message from Ji-won. 3 words, nothing more. Come now. Careful. She found him in a hospital conference room with 2 of his security team, a laptop open, Director Han seated across the table looking considerably less composed than he had during their conversation days earlier. Papers were spread across the table. Invoices, wire transfers, names circled in red. Amanda. Ji-won stood the moment she entered, crossing to her side like it was instinct now, not performance. It's done. We found everything. Han wasn't working alone. 3 board members were funneling equipment funds through shell companies for over 2 years. Real medication budgets redirected. Real patients underfunded, while men in this building padded their pockets. You have proof. Enough to hand to the board tonight and the authorities tomorrow. He exhaled, something in his shoulders finally loosening after months of carrying this quietly. The hospital survives. The funding stays intact. Nobody loses their care because of what these men did. Han, still seated, looked up at Amanda with something between apology and desperation. I never meant for you to get pulled into this. I only asked questions because I was afraid you'd figured it out already. I hadn't, Amanda said quietly. But I know now. Security let him out. The room emptied. And for the first time in weeks, Amanda and Ji-won stood alone without the weight of a lie or an investigation between them. Just 2 people who had somehow accidentally built something real out of a mistake. It's over, she said softly. The investigation is. He looked at her carefully. The other thing, I'm not sure I want that to be over at all. Before she could answer, the conference room door opened again. Min-ho stood in the doorway. I need to talk to you, Min-ho said, eyes on Amanda, not acknowledging Ji-won at all. Alone if that's all right. Ji-won's jaw tightened but he stepped back, giving them the space, his eyes never leaving Amanda's face as he moved toward the door, like a man memorizing something he was afraid to lose. Once they were alone, Min-ho exhaled, running a hand through his hair, looking younger and more uncertain than she'd ever seen him. Amanda, I have been trying to find the right time to say this for weeks, and I don't think there's ever going to be a right time, so I'm just going to say it badly instead. He took a breath. I think I've loved you for longer than I realized. I think I was too careful, too slow, too comfortable in my own head to notice what was standing right in front of me every single day. And I know, that the timing of this is unforgivable. I know it looks like jealousy dressed up as feeling. But it isn't. It's 2 years of quietly falling for a woman I was too much of a coward to tell. Amanda's chest ached, not with joy but with something heavier. Grief almost. Grief for the version of herself who would have given anything to hear those words 18 months ago. Min-ho, she said gently, I waited 2 years for you to say something like that. I know. I used to imagine exactly this. Word for word almost. She smiled, sad and soft. But somewhere between imagining it and hearing it I stopped waiting. I didn't do it on purpose. This happened while I wasn't looking for it. Min-ho's face fell, understanding arriving before she even finished the sentence. Him, Amanda confirmed quietly. I'm sorry. I don't say that to hurt you. I say it because you deserve honesty, the same honesty I wish I'd had the courage to offer you 2 years ago before I convinced myself hiring a fake boyfriend was a good idea. Min-ho let out a breath that was half laugh, half heartbreak. For what it's worth, he's a better man than I gave him credit for. He never once tried to compete for you. He just showed up. Every single time. He stepped back toward the door, pausing there. I hope he knows what he has. He does, Amanda said. I think that's the difference. She found Ji-won on the hospital rooftop, exactly where she somehow knew he'd be. The one place he went when he needed quiet, when he needed to think without an audience. He turned when he heard the door and something in his face braced itself, like he already expected the worst. You don't have to explain, he said quickly. If it's him, if this is where it was always going, I'll walk away clean. No mess. No scandal. I'll tell my grandmother the truth, I'll take the hit publicly, and I will make absolutely sure none of it touches your career or your life. You deserve the man you spent 2 years dreaming about. I'm not going to stand in the way of that. Ji-won. I mean it, Amanda. I'd rather lose you and know you're happy than keep you and wonder if I stole something that was never mine. Ji-won. She crossed the rooftop and took his face in both hands, forcing him to actually look at her instead of already grieving something that hadn't happened. I didn't come up here to say goodbye. He went very still. Then why are you here? Because for 2 years I loved an idea of a man who never once noticed me. And for 2 months I fell in love with the real thing. Someone who showed up in the rain, who slept in a waiting room chair, who told his own grandmother the truth even when it was inconvenient, who protected me before he ever told me why. Her voice broke slightly. The fake relationship became the realest thing that's ever happened to me. I'm not choosing you because Min-ho was too late. I'm choosing you because you were exactly on time, Every single moment without ever asking me to notice. Jiwon's composure, the careful contained thing he wore like armor, finally completely gave way. He pulled her against him, forehead resting against hers, breathing her in like a man who'd spent weeks preparing to lose something and had just impossibly gotten to keep it instead. "I love you," he said quietly, plainly, like it was the simplest truth he'd ever spoken. "I think I've loved you since you called me by the wrong name." "I love you too," Amanda whispered. "Even though you let me believe your name was Kim for 20 whole minutes." He laughed, real, unguarded, rare, and kissed her there on the rooftop under a sky that didn't care at all about billionaires or scandals or 2 years of quiet, unanswered love. It only cared about the two people standing in it now, finally exactly where they were supposed to be. Months later, the scandal fully behind them, the hospital's funding secure, Amanda stood in Halmoni Park's garden as the old woman adjusted the sleeve of her dress with satisfied, knowing hands. "I told you," Halmoni said simply. "I have a good feeling about you." "You were right," Amanda admitted. "I usually am." A small, proud smile. "Now stop looking so nervous and go marry my grandson. He's been waiting considerably longer than you realize." Some love stories start with fireworks. This one started with a mistake. A wrong name, a wrong man, a plan that was never supposed to last past midnight. But sometimes the life you accidentally stumble into is the one you were always meant to find, and sometimes the heart knows the truth long before the person carrying it is ready to admit it. So tell me, do you think Amanda ever really loved Min-ho, or was she in love with the idea of being chosen? And if you'd been in her shoes on that rooftop, which man would you have chosen? The one you dreamed about or the one who actually showed up? Let me know in the comments. I always read them. And if this story kept you here until the very last word, don't forget to subscribe to Afro Meets Seoul Stories so you never miss the next one.